At our meeting. Can you hear me? Okay, so our recording seems to be finally in progress. So let's start with a quick reminder about Education USA. You probably know that we are a Department of State network of over 435 centers in about 180 countries, and our mission is to promote higher education in the America and, of course, provide you with accurate, comprehensive, and current information about higher education in the United States. We work with accredited US higher educational institutions, and our center is located in Kyiv, but you can also sign up for a free online consult and get all the information, have your essay checked, or have us answer any of the burning questions you may have. Today, we're going to talk about two tests, namely GRE and TOEFL, and we have three wonderful speakers with us today. So first of all, we've got Tamar Karchava, an Education USA advisor from Cologne, as well as Marією Кіріловою. She is program director at EMEA, responsible for GRE, and of course Krісом Osmanom, TOEFL strategic partnership director at ETS Global B.V. And they're going to talk to you today about TOEFL and GRE, obviously, and why you need to pass them while applying to study in the USA, as well as share some important information about preparing for this exam and getting the best score possible. And of course, why do these scores matter? And we are here to assist you and help you in this challenging process. So, Tamar, thank you once again for being with us, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I'll be brief, I promise. So, okay, so today's topic is GRE and TOEFL, US standardized tests at a glance, but let me briefly introduce myself as a representative from German side. So my name is Tamar Karchava. I'm originally from Georgia country, but right now I'm part of America House in Cologne. Very briefly about myself, I started in Georgia back in 2004. Then I moved to Hamburg, Germany, and I was part of America from Hamburg. And then I ended up in Cologne as an advisor, and we are trying to cover the whole NRV land. So very briefly about our center on the next slide. So our center was founded as a successor organization of America House Cologne, and there were different America houses in different cities in Germany, and we are one of them. So also names changed a little bit. Some of them are DIEs, so we are named America House NRV. We are located in Cologne. But as for our projects, so we are doing hybrid, on-site, online. So it's not only Education USA. We've got three major projects. One is covering and offering events on transatlantic topics, 50 plus events. This year it was a bit more. So on culture, education, politics, business, and you see the numbers of the guests we are reaching out throughout the whole state. Another project is America House at School, which brings US speakers and similar topics to schools. And very often it's on demand. For example, it's like US elections, education system, American dream, etc. And my part, which I'm in charge of, is Education USA program. And as Victoria mentioned, supported and funded by US State Department. This is our website, but technical details and contact information comes later. So very briefly about Education USA Germany. We are 10 certified Education USA centers in the whole country, and we are all trying to provide unbiased and updated information on different studying possibilities in the US. Of course, Education USA's mission is higher education, and we are covering, let's say, undergrad, grad, PhD, language programs, certificate programs, short-term, but also in Germany, we are, information-wise, we are assisting all the interested ones with all possible ways to visit US. It might be not only educational, but it might be, let's say, camp counselors or au pair. So we are providing a lot of information basically on every possible way. And the reason I'm here today is that as a German advisor, I was assigned to assist Ukrainian students, prospective students, or interested ones from Ukraine who are now residing and now are located in Germany with all possible ways, and helping them, assisting them to find the information they might be interested in. Basically, that is it from my side. This is the website which connects all German centers, or 10 German certified centers. And on the next slide, you will see all the contact information for us. So America House NRV, and you see how you can reach us. Yeah, that's it from my side. Thank you once again. And now I will, floor is yours, Maria.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Tamar. Thank you also for the useful information that you shared with us. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. It's really our pleasure to be presenting to you, and we thank our friends at Education USA for the kind invitation and for letting us present to you and hopefully be better to inform you better about the GRE and the TOEFL tests. So I will get started with the GRE test, then I will give the floor to my colleague Chris to speak to you about the TOEFL. We have quite a presentation actually, so I'll try to get through it quickly, but if you have any questions, please ask them in the chat box anytime. I'd be very happy to answer them. So as you may already know, the GRE is required for admissions at quite a few master degrees at business and law school as well. So today we'll look at ways to register, what does the test entail, and so on. This is our agenda for today. As I mentioned, we're hoping really to leave you with some useful tips on how to register, how to send your score to institutions, what are the tools that we make available to help you prepare. Also from the GRE side, as Tamar mentioned as well, we are trying to support Ukrainian students onto their journey to higher education. So we do have something to share at the end of the presentation as well. And if we have the time, I have selected a couple of sample GRE questions that I may be able to show you at the end of the presentation. Perfect. So we start with a very quick overview of the GRE general test. As I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, it is used around the world for master program, for specialized masters in business, such as master in finance or master in accounting, for MBA programs, for law programs, doctoral programs, and scholarship programs as well. The good thing about the GRE is that the scores are valid for 5 years. So let's say if you are applying for a master degree now, but within 5 years you decide to join a higher level of program, let's say a doctoral degree, you can still use the same scores without having to retake the test. Also, some students, of course, don't know exactly what they want to study, so you can use some time to help decide, and your scores will continue to be valid in this period. I just wanted to show you especially our efforts in the business school area for those of you that may be thinking about an MBA or a similar program. At the moment, there are more than 1,300 business schools that accept the GRE for their MBA programs. Here on the slide, I have selected a quote from Harvard Business School, which is essentially saying that the GMAT and the GRE are accepted to the same level, so there is no preference of one over the other. And I just wanted to bring that to your attention because traditionally GMAT is probably a better no for business school, but nowadays the GRE is as accepted. Okay, and now I wanted to show you a little bit more about our test center network. It's quite similar to TOEFL as well. The GRE is offered on a continuous basis throughout the year. The GRE is a computer-based test, so you will, take it on a computer, something that you're probably used to using every day. And we do have more than 1,000 test centers in more than 160 countries. Depending on where you're based, you can find a test center that is the closest to you, so you don't have to commute for a very long time. We do have several test centers per country, so I would advise you go to the link on this website to really find the one that is the most convenient to you. And something else that is definitely worth the mention is the GRE test at home. As you can imagine, during the COVID pandemic, our test centers were very disrupted with a lot of closures, with a lot of limitations of the number of students who could test due to spacing and such restrictions. So we came up with the GRE at home solution. It's the good news for you as a test taker is that it's the exact same test as the test at a test center. So there's no difference in the content, in the preparation, in the scores, nothing at all changes for you. Also for the institution that you're applying for, there is no change for them either. It's the same scoring scale and so on. So it's really a good option for those of you that maybe even if a test center is open nowadays, if it's too far away, you can still consider taking the GRE at home just as a more convenient perhaps option. Okay, and now we are moving to the section of this presentation where we're going to talk a little bit more about the test. What is the GRE actually? What are the sections? And what do they really examine? What do they really test? So the GRE has 3 separate sections: the analytical writing section, the verbal reasoning, and the quantitative reasoning. Roughly speaking, each section has about an hour or a little bit over an hour dedicated to it. And the total test comes to 3 hours and 45 minutes. It's an extended period of time that you need to stay focused and you need to stay, very present. And that's why it's very important to prepare in advance. And later in this presentation, I'm going to show you some of the tools that we make available for preparation. Now looking very briefly in each of the sections, we start with the analytical writing section, which assesses critical thinking and analytical writing skills. In very simple terms, the section contains of 2 separate essays. Each essay has to be written in 30 minutes. The first essay requires you to analyze an issue. For example, you will be given a prompt on the screen and you will be asked about your opinion. Of course, you need to back it up with some reasonable arguments to support your position. And the second essay is dedicated to analyzing an argument where, again, on the screen, you will see a prompt with an argument which maybe sometimes might be a little bit more challenging, and then you will be required to develop your position in relation to this argument. The second section of the test is the verbal reasoning section, which assesses your ability to understand what you read and how you apply your reasoning skills. I think one of the questions I have included at the end of the presentation will show you what it really looks like. But the question types include reading comprehension or text completion. For example, you have to select the right word from a choice of a drop-down menu, a sentence equivalence, and so on and so forth. And one of the most important things to remember about this section is that you need to have quite a rich vocabulary, because sometimes you will see a text, let's say, from a very advanced biology textbook, and you need to be able to navigate it. And not knowing a couple of the words in the text, it's completely okay, because all of us don't know all the words in the English language, but it is important that you are able to continue navigating your exam, just like you will be required to do at the master study level. When you don't know a word, you have to continue with your studies. So this is kind of the gist of the verbal reasoning section. And now we're coming to the final section, is the quantitative reasoning section, which assesses your ability to interpret and analyze quantitative information and solve problems using mathematical models. As you can already see on the right-hand side of the screen, we do make available an on-screen calculator for you. So the idea of this section is, we're not really testing, are you able to subtract and multiply and so on. We're really trying to understand, are you able to navigate numbers, and are you able to make decisions based on numerical data. The skills and the type of questions that you can expect to see are based on elementary mathematical concepts such as arithmetic, algebra, geometry, and data analysis. Maybe some of you have been away from school for quite a while. I know that I have. And I have forgotten some of these formulas and so on. We do provide a free resource for you to kind of brush up on these skills and maybe get a reminder and a refresher. I'll show you the resource in a minute. Okay, this is just to give you an idea of what the test looks like. So this is really the on-screen experience. You can see the calculator is available on the top panel. You can go next to see the next question. You can go back as well. And this is very useful. You'll see later we'll speak about the design of the test, but it really allows you flexibility. Maybe you decide to maybe answer all the difficult questions first and the easy ones last, or the other way around. It doesn't really matter, but you have the freedom to navigate through the exam as it's most fitting to you. Something else to note here is that you maybe see the option to hide the timer. We do realize that this can be a nerving experience for many of you. So if you prefer to not see the timer, you can hide it. But of course, still keep an eye on the time, just so you don't run out of it halfway through the section. Okay, and here, this is maybe slightly complex, but I wanted to share with you because this is very specific to the GRE. And as I mentioned on a lot of the sections, for example, the verbal reasoning and the quantitative reasoning, you have two separate sections within this larger umbrella of a, let's say, category. And the way it works is that the first section always gives you moderately challenging content. All students start with the same content. Then depending on how you do on your first section, let's say you perform moderately well, you get a second section with, again, moderately challenging content. But let's say if you performed very well, your second section will be with more challenging content. And you see how then the scores are distributed, according to how you did on this second section. And of course, I mentioned already earlier, this may be a little bit too technical in terms of the back workings of the exam, but it really does allow you the flexibility to move freely within section and to use your own test taking strategy in a way that really works for you. Okay, so now I'll give you just a couple of quick registration tips. The most important one really is register early. As soon as you know that you have to take the GRE, please register, even if it's a couple of months down the line or even longer. You can really secure your spot, because especially at the test centers, the seats are limited. And it may happen that maybe at the test center closest to you, there's no availability and you have to travel further. So make sure that you take advantage of registering early. Everything happens online. You create an ETS account where you can see the available test centers, how far they are from you. Actually, in the ETS account, you will be receiving your scores as well. This is where you can prepare. So it's a very, very important resource for you to really keep safe, bookmark it, have it accessible. So at every step of your journey, you can access it. Something very, very important is our requirements for the ID are quite strict, in that the name you use when you register for your exam must be exactly a match of your ID documents. And this is very important because, of course, when you go to the test center, you will be asked for your ID and so on and so forth. So please, when you register, be very diligent about how you fill in the form, what are the names, make sure you don't make any mistakes, any typos and so on, just to avoid any confusion at the test center. And after, so this is the screen after you have created your ETS account. You have selected your username, your password, and this is where you come. So when you click on the blue register/find test center button, this is where you can see the test centers. This is when you can select the time if there's a couple of options available. And just so you know, this is also where you register for the online test, for taking the test at home. So there is no change to the process. It's the same type of button, the same type of process you need to follow to test both at the test center and at home. Okay, so now you have already tested. What happens next? Let's have a look at that. You need to know the score scales for all three components of the GRE. So for the analytical writing, it's from 0 to 6 points in half-point increments. So you may see a score of let's say 3.5, a 4, a 4.5, etc. For the verbal reasoning and quantitative reasoning, it's a little bit different in that the scores are between 130 and 170 in 1 point increment. So you may see a score of 155, 156, etc., etc. So just keep that in mind. Something else also important to mention here when we talk about the scoring, a lot of students are very perhaps nervous of how they did on their test. And this is something that you're able to see immediately after you finish your GRE test. The next screen after you have done all of the sections and so on, the next screen you see is the unofficial scores. And the unofficial scores, if we can just go back to the previous slide, the unofficial scores really give you an idea of how you did on two of the measures, the verbal reasoning and the quantitative reasoning. These two sections are scored by a computer, so we can immediately tell you, look, this is how we think you did. Again, these are unofficial scores, but usually in most cases, they're very similar to what you will see on your final score report. And this is important because in the next steps, now we can move to the next slide, please. Thank you. This is where you have to select the score recipients. You may know that with the GRE, you can select 4 score recipients, so 4 separate institutions that you can send your scores to. And we really believe that seeing your unofficial scores gives you a little bit of reassurance. You know, I've done okay on my test. I won't be, hitting below the mark of what the requirements are at my university. So then you can go ahead here and add the scores. It's very simple. I don't think I have it on these slides because it's very, very intuitive. But essentially, when you click on this blue button, you can select the country where you're applying, and then you can kind of scroll through a menu with all the universities that accept the GRE. So it's very, very simple. Okay, and we've discussed your unofficial scores. Now let's discuss your official scores, which are reported about 10 to 15 days after the test day. You will see them online in your ETS account. That's why I mentioned, please keep it safe and handy. This is the time also when the institutions you have designated, the 4 institutions you have designated, will also see your scores. By the way, if you're applying to 1 or 2 institutions, you can just designate them. You don't have to max out the number of institutions. Okay, and something else I wanted to mention is just the GRE diagnostic service. So this is available when your scores are available, and it's free of charge. It's loaded to your ETS account, and essentially what it does is that it gives you a bit of an idea of how you did. It tells you which questions you got right, which questions you got wrong, what was the difficulty level, right? We discussed earlier that the GRE has varying level of difficulty for the second section. And what was the time spent? Especially, you know, sometimes it may happen that a student should retake the test. For example, you know, you were not feeling well or you didn't have enough time to prepare. And then this can give you really good information of where else you should be focusing in your continuous preparation. Okay. And now we are getting, I believe, to one of the final sections of this presentation, which is going to talk about how to for the GRE. And on this slide, when we load the content, you can see there's a lot of free GRE test preparation materials. I think, Victoria, if you just click through, it will show many, many different options of the preparation available. But essentially what is available is 2 free tests for you. Victoria, are you able to kind of click through the slide just so we can load the content, or that's not showing?
I will do it.
Okay. Oh, that's even better. Perfect. Thank you so much. So this is essentially the website where you can really see all the materials that can help you prepare for the test. We have 2 free tests available. So you just log into your account. It's free of charge. You're not making any commitment at all. And you can see the 2 free tests available. You can do them just to kind of see what is the level, how much do I still need to prepare. Maybe some sections are very easy for you. Maybe some you need to prepare a little bit more. And so on. We also have, I mentioned earlier, free of charge, the math review, it's called. All these formulas, you know, from high school that you might have forgotten, from algebra, geometry, and so on. This is free of charge for applicants. We also have a couple of other resources. For example, for the analytical writing, I mentioned to you earlier, you will have 2 prompts. And all the bank with all the prompts is available online. I believe there are 3,000 prompts. So if you're really motivated and you really want to practice, you really can do so. So thank you so much, Victoria, for sharing this. We can move on now with the slides. Of course, it's important. We can just click through these because we mentioned them already. And when we go to the next slide, I believe what you will be able to see is essentially the resources that we have that are paid resources. We have a variety, for example, online books or physical practice books if this is, more convenient for you, and so on. So the website Victoria showed you, which is a very, very simple, ets.org/GRE/prepare, you can find all of these resources and more to help you prepare. Something else that I just wanted to mention, it's our newest offering in terms of preparation. It's available for just over 6 months or so. It's the GRE Mentor online course. Essentially, it's the closest to kind of like an app on your phone that you can use anytime to practice questions. 600 plus questions are available there. It's really nice because you can really set goals. For example, you can say, my test is in 1 month, so what do I need to do every day to prepare? And the app will kind of make a learning plan for you. So it's definitely worth taking a look. It's also available on the link we discussed from the previous slides. Okay, now I mentioned at the beginning of this presentation that we do have some support for Ukrainian students. Tamar also mentioned that she has been designated to assist with that in Germany. We are able to offer some GRE vouchers for those of you that are still continuing with your education journey, that would, that the universities you go to require the GRE. So my advice here would be, please do reach out to your local Education USA resources or to Tamar, who will be able to guide you. We work together closely, we communicate, so we will be able to tell you what is available for your region and so on, because sometimes there are changes. But just so you know, there is support available. Okay, and I think this is the end of my presentation, in the sense that these are all the social media channels that I'm sure you know better than we do. Please connect with us. We're on LinkedIn, we're on Facebook, and so on. There you can also find useful tips, but also get feedback from other test takers that have already gone through the journey you are embarking upon. So stay connected. I think the last couple of slides are just the sample questions from the GRE. I don't know that we have time for that, but maybe Victoria, you can just put the first one on the screen while Chris is setting up. This is from the verbal reasoning, just so you get an idea of what it looks like. And that's it from me. Thank you very much, everyone, for your attention. Thank you very much for being part of this session. Again, if you have any questions, please drop them in the chat box, because I'll stay until the end, of course, and we'll be very happy to answer any questions. Thank you again.
Thank you so much, Maria, for your wonderful presentation. And Christopher, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. And a big thank you to Victoria, Oksana, and Tamar for inviting me here today to give you a nice talk about the TOEFL IBT test. We're going to switch gears a little bit from the very intense GRE to the wonderful TOEFL IBT English Language Proficiency Test. So this is what we'll be covering today. It's simply going to be, what is the TOEFL IBT test? So we'll have a look at it, some of the test formats and features. We'll also look into some of the test prep. So what are some of the things that you can utilize to help you prepare for the test? The good news is we have a lot of free resources that you can take advantage of. We'll also look at the registration. One of the great things about TOEFL, you've already seen a lot of how to register with Maria's presentation on GRE. You'll see a lot of similarities, but we'll still take you through it. And then we'll have a look at the scores. What are the scores that you can expect? How do you report scores to institutions that you're interested in? And what you should focus on. So, what is the TOEFL IBT test? Well, it really is the world's premier English language proficiency test for the purpose of university study, work, and immigration. It's an academic test, and this is very, very important. It really is an academic test that will use integrated questions to measure all 4 language skills. And we'll go into a little bit more detail about what we mean by integrated questions, which is very important. But basically what it means is that when we assess a specific skill, you will also use other skills in the other sections of the spectrum in order to answer it. And then the TOEFL test is delivered at ETS authorized test centers, or we also have a very popular at-home edition. So the good question is why do students choose the TOEFL IBT test? Well, because of its academic nature, we do see that it really is preferred by admissions officers, in particularly the United States. And this is really due to the academic content that is presented to students. Because of this, we see that when students are using the TOEFL test in order to apply to universities, we do see that a good portion, over 90% of test takers, do get into their first or second choice university. And also what's very interesting about TOEFL is because it's so academic, is that when students do take it, especially if they're moving into a bachelor's or an undergraduate program for the first time, this is actually going to be really their first exposure to a university level environment. So because of this, we do see that students really do get a head start over their peers. And this is a nice, interesting graphic that I like to just show, just to kind of show you basically the global nature of the TOEFL IBT test. It really is accepted worldwide. And especially if we look at the United States, for instance, over 90% of US institutions do prefer the TOEFL test over other English language tests. So let's have a look at the test format and features. So what's interesting about the TOEFL test, it has really grown in the past few years where students can take it in a few ways. The traditional way is, of course, the test center, where we do have 60 admins a year. Students can show up, they'll take the test with a live proctor, but we also have something called the home edition. And the home edition was really born during the time of COVID, where students weren't able really to get to a testing center, for instance. So we developed this really wonderful option where students can use their own computer and they can take it at home, basically. And there's some advantages to this. One of the advantages is that students can register for the test 24/7. They have access to 4 days a week as a test opportunity. Again, they use their own equipment and internet access, and they are reviewed through a live remote proctor that's also uses AI monitoring, for instance, to ensure the security of the test. And we've also started what we call the paper edition, which is only in a few select countries, but we have seen that students do still prefer to test on paper. And so now we have that option for them as well. So this is just a nice little slide that will go over some additional features of the TOEFL IBT test, basically. And if we look at that, it really is a test your way, where you can take the test center or at home. We have extended online registration, so students can register up to 2 days before the test, which might prove to be useful in case they need to, satisfy any last-minute deadline requirement. We have reduced the retest waiting time, so usually students would have to wait around 12 or 16 days in order to retest, but now if a student needs to retest, they can wait in as little as 3 days. We do have instant scoring. I think this is a really nice feature. When you go through the reading and listening sections, for instance, once you finish the test, you will get an early indication of the scores, albeit they are unofficial scores, and fast score turnaround. This is also very important. Students will get their scores as soon as 4 days after taking the test. And we have this really wonderful feature right now called My Best Scores. This allows students who take the test more than once to show admissions officers what their best score was per section. So let's have a look at the TOEFL IBT test formats. We will have 4 skills. It's reading, which is 30 to 40 questions that will take you up to 54 to 72 minutes. Then you'll move into the listening portion, where we'll listen to lectures, conversations. This will take between 41 to 57 minutes. We'll then move into the speaking, which is very important. This is 1 independent, 3 integrated, which is 17 minutes. And then we'll finish with the writing, which is a 1 integrated question and 1 independent for a total of 50 minutes. Now we can go into a little further detail of what we are expecting per section. So really, let's start with the reading section. So what the reading section is going to do is it's really going to assess how well you can read and understand the kind of materials used in an academic environment. And there's that word again, it's very important. This is an academic test. So we will be using actual excerpts from university level textbooks that will introduce topics. The good news is the way the test is designed, you do not necessarily need prior knowledge of a particular topic, but we do have a glossary feature, for instance, that allows you to define words not commonly used in case you need to look something up. So when we move on to the listening section, this is really going to measure your ability to understand conversations and lectures in English. And just re-emphasizing the academic portion, we're talking about conversations really rooted in campus life or some sort of university environment. These conversations won't be everyday conversations, for instance, that we're going to have in a supermarket or perhaps at a park, but it's really going to be tied into a university setting. We're really listening for basic comprehension. We're listening for pragmatic understanding and connecting and synthesizing information. And the way the structure works is that there will be 3 to 4 lectures with some classroom discussion, and we'll also listen to 2 to 3 conversations with 2 speakers. And again, all the conversations, all the lectures will use some sort of campus-based language. And then we're going to move on to the speaking section. Now, what's interesting about the TOEFL IBT test in comparison to other tests, for instance, is with TOEFL IBT, you will not do the speaking section at the test center in the sense that you will do it with someone at the test center. The way our speaking section works is that you'll do it completely on the computer using a headset. The way this works is we'll have 4 tasks based, again, on academic topics and campus situations. We'll have 1 independent task and 3 integrated tasks. Now, integrated, this is very important because remember, this is really the way when we speak, we're not just using a speaking skill, but we're actually incorporating other skills in order to answer the question. So this is what this means. So we'll listen to some sort of university lecture, for instance. So that's listening, active listening. Perhaps we are taking notes about what we're hearing, and then we're going to ask to answer a question basically by speaking. This is what we mean by integrated tasks. We will give you 15 to 30 seconds of preparation time, and then you'll have a good 45, 60 seconds to response time that really allows you to speak freely so that the raters who are rating you will be able to understand that you do have a good grasp of the topic because you're able to answer within 60 seconds. You respond by speaking into a microphone, and responses are captured by the computer and sent to ETS for scoring. So let's go to the best section, which happens to be the final section, the dessert, the writing section, where you get to test out your writing skills. It really is going to measure your ability to write in English, once again, in an academic setting. And you'll have 2 writing tasks. The first one is, again, the integrated task, where we're going to use other skills from the different sections in order to answer the question. This means we're listening to a short lecture. We're going to read a passage, and then we're going to write about what we've read and what we've heard. And then we're going to go to the independent, which is 30 minutes, and this is really the essay portion of the writing task. Your responses will be based on personal experience or perhaps a personal opinion. What we are looking for is that you're able to present your ideas in a clear, well-organized manner. Responses are typed using a computer keyboard or handwritten in the paper edition, for instance. So test prep. Let's go to the next section. So what's great about the TOEFL IBT test is that, and what's really great about ETS, and Maria has already emphasized it in her section, is that we really want to give people access to education. And by doing this, we are very transparent about our tests. So we give you a ton of free resources that you can access from our website. These are just a few examples. We have a TOEFL IBT test prep planner. This is a free 8-week preparation plan that includes tips and skill building activities. So it allows you to basically plan in 8 weeks in advance, right up to you decide to take the test. Of course, we have the official guide to the TOEFL IBT test, comprehensive test prep handbook, sample questions, full-length practice tests. We also have the official TOEFL IBT test. This is a really great resource. You can actually look at older tests that were actually used, audio files for listening passages, and answer keys and score guides. And we also have an official TOEFL IBT prep course. This is 60+ hours of content, speaking and writing scores. It is paid. You can have a 6-month subscription. We also have this really cool TOEFL IBT MOOC. It's a free self-paced course. It's highly interactive, and you can also get scored on your speaking and writing sections. And then again, just reemphasizing some more materials. We have free practice tests that I can definitely recommend. Again, these include real past test questions. If you want to go deeper, we have the TOEFL Practice Online. This will actually simulate the TOEFL IBT test for you. You can do full test, half test, or you can do speaking only tests. And you can also get feedback and scores for all 4 skills. And we also have the TOEFL Go app that also has nice free sample questions with it. So if you prefer preparing on your phone, for instance. One wonderful series that I can really recommend is the Inside the TOEFL test that is on our YouTube channel. Do have a look at this. This is fantastic. What they do is they really go section to section to section, give you examples, give you tips and tricks, tell you what they're looking for in responses, give you examples of bad responses, give you good examples of good responses. And we do find that students who really go look at the video series prepare very well for the test. We also have a full mock test that you can use, and which includes answer explanations, but definitely check out the YouTube channel. So how can we register for the TOEFL IBT test? Well, what's the good news is it is very much like registering for the GRE. So it really starts with your TOEFL account. You create your account. Once you do that, you can select a test center nearest you, or you can choose the home edition. You pick a date and time that is the most convenient. TOEFL tests are available 6 days a week. You can complete your registration and payment. There you can select the score recipient. So if you're applying to a specific university, for instance, that's the time to input their code so that they can show up. So once you finish the test, the scores will automatically be sent to them. So how do you create your account? Well, you can go online, and this is what it looks like basically. What Maria said, be sure that your name exactly matches the name of your ID, because they are really going to check this whenever you check in at the test center. If you need accommodations, we can accommodate that. So if you have any learning disabilities, for instance, and you're used to receiving extra time when you were taking the test, you can actually have this as well for the TOEFL IBT test. You just need to request these before you register. So within this account, you can pretty much do everything. Like I said, you can register for a test, reschedule an appointment. You can confirm your test details. You can select the universities that you want to send your scores to. You can buy test prep materials. You can view your old test scores. You can order additional score reports or needed. And of course, you can update your contact information, except your name and date of birth, because these will be used for identification purposes. So this is a good screenshot of how you can basically register or find test centers and dates. You can just click on that button, and then it'll send you to a section on Google Maps, for instance, where you can select the test center. And then at this time, you can choose to take the TOEFL IBT at a test center, or you can choose to take the home edition, for instance. And this is what scheduling the test looks like. A really good tip is if you are choosing the home edition, please do be mindful of the AM and PM designations when selecting a date and time, because we do have cases where students will choose, for instance, a 12:30 AM test thinking that it's 12:30 PM. And when they show up for lunchtime, they realize they missed the test. So do please pay attention to the AM, PM. In terms of the ID requirements before you register, please check the ID requirements from where you're testing. If you have any questions, please contact us. And just to repeat and reaffirm, you have to bring the ID that you used to register with, and the name on the ID has to match your registration name whenever you arrive at the test center or when you're doing the home edition. You can also register for the test session using the TOEFL Go app, for instance. This is also what it looks like. It's also quite handy and convenient, also if you prefer doing things by phone. So what can we expect on the actual day of the test? Well, when you show up to the test center, you just make yourself known. You have to check in. Again, you're going to show the ID that you used to register. There will be a security inspection by staff just to make sure that you don't have any devices on you. You'll use the computer and headset provided at the test station, and you can always ask a proctor for help if needed. Now, what's interesting about the at-home experience is it does mimic the test center, but instead of doing it with a person, you'll do it with an online proctor through your webcam on your computer. You'll use your own equipment, but you can still ask the online proctor for help if needed. So let's look at the scores. So how is the TOEFL test scored, for instance? And what do the score reports look like? Well, with the 4 sections that we have with reading, listening, speaking, and writing, it's a section score from 0 to 30. So each section has a maximum of 30 points, which has a total score of 0 to 120, 120 being the maximum amount of points. The reading and listening sections are scored by a computer. This is why you'll get your preliminary results once you finish the test. So you will see how you did on the reading and listening sections. They are still unofficial because they have to be confirmed by ETS. We always do a check with a human rater. Nothing is just scored by the computer, but we always do that human check. And with speaking and writing, we do a combination of both, of human raters as well as AI. When you're applying to universities, do check the requirements because sometimes they do differ from program and from institution. If you're still unsure of what your institution requires that you're interested in, please do contact their admissions officer there. So this is what the TOEFL IBT score reports look like. Once you finish the test, they're posted to ETS about 4 to 8 days after the test. So once you take the test, it'll be sent to a central rater. They'll rate it, and you should receive your scores within 4 to 8 days. So it's quite quick. If you do the home edition, for instance, and if there's some disruptions in the test, meaning someone walked in when you're doing the test, or maybe they need to do an additional security review, which is not uncommon, the review process or the release of your scores could take a little bit longer. So please keep that in mind. And like with all our TOEFL tests, the scores are valid for 2 years after the test date. So sending scores. This is done during the registration process, as we referred to before. You can select up to 4 score recipients at no additional charge. This is what it looks like. So you can search by like location, you can search by name. Each institution also has what we call a designated DI code, a designated institution code. When you look at the university's website, and they tell you that they do accept the TOEFL test, they also usually indicate this code, for instance. You can put that in there, and then you can simply just add the score recipients. And then once you finish the test, and once your scores are released, these scores are then sent directly to the institution. So let's look at some scoring features, which I think is quite helpful, especially for students taking the TOEFL IBT test. So you can see how you did before leaving the test center. So you can immediately view your reading and listening scores on screen after you complete the test. This is quite nice, I think, in terms of feedback. It really gives you an early indication of your performance. It does help you decide if you should report or cancel your scores at the end of the test. You do have that option because remember, you indicated the institutions that you wanted to send your scores to. So if you didn't like the scores, you can decide not to report them, for instance. You can cancel your scores. We do generally recommend to please report them because, you know, you still have the two sections left, the writing and the speaking, and also it gives the university an indication of how you're doing. And again, these scores are unofficial, pending final reviews by ETS, because nothing is just scored on the computer. We always have that last human element to confirm your scores. Now, my best scores, I think, are a wonderful feature that not only help test takers, so students, but it also really helps institutions to find the best candidate. Because what my best does is if you take the test more than once, it will actually list the best score that you received in that particular section. So this is a good example. If you look at the test date of, for instance, October 19th, 2019, these are the test scores that they received on that date. But if you look at the, for instance, the writing section, which was about an 18, it's a bit low. If you look at their My Best, the university can see that, well, on June 2nd, 2019, this student received a 20. So even though they scored an 18 on this test session, the university does know that at one point you did score a 20. So they do know what you're capable of. So My Best Scores, I think, is a really great feature for students and institutions to take advantage of. And again, just gives even more examples of what My Best has, because universities will require a total score in most cases, but they'll also have cut scores, for instance. This gives you a good example. The institution requires a total of 80 points, which is quite common, I think, for undergraduate bachelor programs. You do generally see an 80, but they also need to get an 18 for each section. So if you look at test date 1, if you just go back a little bit. So if you look at test date 1, they received a total score of 76. They also didn't get the 18, so they kind of missed it as well. If you look at test date 2, they got at least an 18 in all the sections, but they only have a 78. But if you add up all of their My Best scores, not only do they hit the 18 for each section, but they also receive the 80 in total. So this is just an example of how My Best works. So when we look at the our speaking section, speaking, I think, especially when it comes to English language proficiency tests, is an insanely important aspect of the test, because especially when we're looking at students on a specific level, such as the CEFR level, for instance, what separates our test from other tests is you will do it on the computer. Other tests, you might have to do it at the test center. And if you do it at the test center, there might be some bias, for instance. Maybe they don't like an accent. And so they decide to lower the level of the person that they're evaluating. With us, that doesn't really happen because we implement not only technology such as the ETS speech rater that gives us feedback on how a student is doing. Are they clear? Are they being able to understand? But your speaking portion is actually sent anonymously to a central location where you can be rated in a fair way. And we really think these methods really eliminate bias of the test and will give you a good, fair score. And we really think that no other English proficiency test combines the benefits of both AI and human scoring for speaking and writing. So here are some additional resources as we come to the end of the presentation. We have TOEFL search destination that you can use. For instance, if you're looking per states in the United States, you can, if you're interested in, like, let's say my home state, Missouri, you can choose Missouri, and then you can see all the wonderful institutions that will accept TOEFL scores. So this is a resource that you can use. We also have the search free service that you can indicate if you want to be listed, for instance, when you take the test. This allows other universities to also look for you. So if you did really well, for instance, on writing, and universities are looking for qualified candidates who do very well on writing, they also have the option to find you, for instance, using the service. And then, of course, for more information, you can always visit us at www.ets.org/TOEFL. Again, there are a lot of wonderful free resources that you can use. I highly recommend it. And I think that's it for our section. Thank you so much for listening to the presentation about TOEFL. And if you have any questions, please let us know.
Thank you so much, Christopher. And of course, thank you, Maria. Thank you, Tamar, for joining us, for your wonderful presentations and for sharing so much vital and important information with our students. I immensely enjoyed your presentations, and I think we should now go on to some questions. So any of you in the audience who maybe have any questions or find some elements of presentations a bit unclear, please do not hesitate to reach out to us and to leave us a message in the comments or to speak out directly.
I have a question about sections. Chris, you mentioned that in some section you might get 3 or 4 texts or 3 or 4 tasks or something like that. How can I guess how many tasks will I get? 3 or 4? Unmute yourself, please.
That's the first time in a while that that's happened. I'm always usually good at unmuting myself. So no, that's a good question. So, I mean, it is random because, you know, it is a true standardized assessment, which means that everyone takes the test in the same way, but not everyone will take the same tests. So it really depends on the test session, whether or not you'll do 3, whether or not you'll do 4. Also, ETS has the ability to try out new questions. So you might get an extra question because they're trying something out. Because again, they're always trying to find ways to better evaluate English language proficiency levels with specific test items. So it really depends. I mean, it's not going to be consistent, but that's what we give you an indication of what you can expect, 3 to 4, basically, if that makes sense.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I actually have a question of my own, and it pertains to the home option of taking the exam at home. I know a lot of our students are currently struggling with technical issues. So I'm wondering, are there any specific requirements for software or operation system standards so that they could take the test and be sure that everything goes smoothly?
So for the at-home TOEFL, and I think GRE is the same, but they can actually go to the website and they can actually test out their equipment, basically. Of course, the most important aspect would be a stable, high-speed internet connection for the duration of the test, basically. If something happens, such as a technical difficulty, they try to fix it on the spot, because remember, you're not just doing the test by yourself. There's always going to be a live human proctoring that is helping you. If something happens, it's not necessarily a bad thing. It just might mean that the release of your scores could be delayed so that the ETS security reviewers can look at the session and just make sure that, well, it was just an internet disruption. We'd have nothing to worry about. The integrity of the test wasn't compromised. But I would definitely recommend go to the website, test out the equipment, make sure that the internet speed is good enough.
Thank you so much. Yes, I see. I was actually wondering also about the availability of paper certificates after taking the test. So here in Ukraine, we do not always have reliable postal services, but is there any chance to get a paper proof of you having taken the test?
Yeah, for the TOEFL test, you can have paper scores mailed to you, of course. You basically have 2 options. You can do the paper or you can do the PDF download. In practice, however, if they're going to use it to apply to a university program or basically apply to any program, ETS does require or really strongly recommend that the institution not accept paper scores from students, but only scores that were released in the system. But indeed, students can have a paper score mailed to them of course.
Thank you so much for this insight and important information.
I also have some questions to both of you, if I may.
Of course.
So first, Chris is, I can see you on the screen. So a bit more information, if you could provide regarding paper edition. So that's a little bit new for me. So can a center request paper edition, or how does it work with paper?
That's a great question, Tamar. So currently, the paper edition administrations are only available in specific countries. These will be the US, Mexico, Colombia, and India, but they will be rolling this out to other territories throughout the year and the years to come, basically. So I think for our audience, the paper edition might not be so interesting just because it might not be available to them. However, if you are an institution, for instance, that are receiving students from those countries, then you could be aware that, okay, they might have taken the TOEFL test on paper, basically. But what we'll do is we'll definitely keep you updated once the paper edition becomes available, for instance, in Germany. So then that you're aware, and then you'll be able to give your students that option.
Okay, thank you. You know, the idea behind that is that sometimes students are comparing pros and cons between TOEFL and IELTS. And, you know, with IELTS, it's paper is possible. And that's why there were questions, but I always denied. And that's a good option maybe for other countries as well.
Yeah, the challenge, you know, is basically because it's a true standardized assessment, meaning that if you look at all 4 skills, everyone takes the test in the exact same way. Paper has always been challenging because we don't want students to take the speaking section at a test center, because the way it's administered by the test center, the way it's rated by the test center could vary from test center to test center to test center, and that's something that we can't control. So the challenge for us was, well, how can we provide a paper edition that stays true to the standard assessment? And that's this one where you would do the paper in a test center, but then you would do the speaking edition at home. I do hope they can roll it out quickly to other territories, because like you said, I think in many cases, students are just still used to taking tests on paper. So I think this would be a great option for them.
And one last comment, Chris, please, if you may mention, what are the offers from you to prospective Ukrainian students?
Oh, that's good. I'm glad you reminded me, Tamar. And indeed, it wasn't in the presentation. But right now, what we are offering is we're offering a $40 discount off the TOEFL test. All you need to do is just let your EducationUSA advisor know, or the university that you're applying to know that you're interested, and then they'll get into contact with me, and then we can give you the voucher code. And tomorrow, I think we already processed one student, for instance.
Yes, she was so happy. You cannot imagine. Yeah,
that's great. So yeah, indeed, that's available, but we can't. Unfortunately, we can't receive requests directly from students. They have to come from an institution like EducationUSA or like a university, for instance.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And,
thank you so much. Yes, Tamara, sorry.
Yeah, 2 questions to Maria, if I may ask. So,
of course, please go ahead.
You mentioned law schools. That was a bit surprising and interesting for me. So, does that mean that it might at some point replace LSAT test, or is on top of LSAT test?
Yes, thank you so much. That's a great question, and that's something really, really new as well for us at ETS. Actually, the GRE is accepted at law school for, I would say, about a year or a year and a half, so not that very long, you know, in the big scheme of things. The reason why GRE is accepted at law school is because they did a lot of validity studies, and they figured out that at the end, the GRE is really measuring the same skills that are required for success that the LSAT is measuring. And so a lot of law schools in the US, it started accepting the GRE. It really does allow for a little bit more flexibility. For example, the GRE is administered many times a year. Usually, let's say in a bigger city, we have 2 to 3 test administrations per month, while the LSAT has very, very, more rigid, let's say, test taking conditions. And so for the convenience of students, and especially, during the pandemic, everybody was starting to think outside of the box and considering options that usually won't necessarily be on the table. So yes, the GRE is admitted in place of LSAT. So if students do the GRE, they don't need to do the LSAT anymore.
Okay, thank you. And one question, I do recall that GRE, once you give a wrong answer, you might lose a score. It used to be. Is it this still in action? Because some students are really frightened because of that. And is it still the element? Because with the TOEFL, there is not on the plate. Yeah. So
Yes.
what about the GRE?
Yes, that's really a great question. And yes, it's still the case that students need to, let's say the GRE really examines, can students follow instructions? We must remember students have only 30 minutes to write an essay. And this is, everything from kind of scripting out the draft to writing out the essay to proofreading it to possibly improving the text and so on. And so essentially the reason we put these sort of guidelines and the reason we're strict about these limits, word limits, let's say, is because when students go to study at the master level, a lot of the times the assignments they write are going to be, reports or essays that have a word limitations. For example, you need to write an essay of 1,500 words or a report of 2,000 words and so on. And so the GRE is kind of essentially attempting to teach them this sort of discipline that sometimes you can say a lot more in a concise way and you don't need to write a very large text in order to express, your ideas. All of this is online. That's why I'm really hoping both me and Chris were able to underline that ETS tries to be as transparent as possible with the preparation materials. We don't hide anything about the test. All of it is online. As I mentioned, all 3,000 writing prompts, all of them that a student may see are online. So our sincere advice for students is, if you're preparing, go to the website. There's a wealth of information. A lot of it is free of charge as well. And also tips like that, how long should the essay be? Would, for example, points be deducted and so on? That's also part of this preparation.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
Thank you so much, Maria. And I would like to reach out once again to our dear audience members. So if you've got any questions, please feel free to reach out to us. You can unmute your mic or put a comment in the messages. And I've actually got a question of myself to you, Chris, if you don't mind. I was wondering, do you have any maybe recommendations for preparing for the listening part of the exam? So any resources you could share?
Yeah, sure. With the listening section can be challenging, especially if you're not already immersed, for instance, in an English-speaking environment. There are a ton of resources that we can use. One of the things they said is to subscribe to some academic level podcasts, whatever that means. So like a science talk or or something that interests you on a higher level. I do know that ETS also provides audio files on its website that you can download and listen to. That gives you some examples, for instance, that, but definitely, try to look at podcasts, maybe watch some, YouTube videos, be creative, try to get something above perhaps a Netflix show, for instance, like a Friends episode, but something that's talking more in the academic realm. I mean, that's usually what we try to recommend if you can do it.
Thank you so much. That's really helpful. So if there aren't any questions, I think we are starting to wrap up for today. But please remember, anyone who's maybe watching at home after the live meeting, you can always reach out to us directly and sign up for a free online consult. And if you're interested in the opportunities to receive a free voucher or reduction on the fee of your test, you can also reach out to us and we'll put you in contact with Christopher or Maria and help you on your way to taking your tests and of course successfully getting into the university of your dreams.
Thank you very much once again for the
Exactly.
brilliant information. You know, no matter how long you are in advising or you feel familiar with this test, there is a lot of information on both of them always, and it's really is interesting to feel updated. And the guys who are planning to take these tests, both of them are very interesting tests, the content-wise, and the various, yes. So yeah, I'm kind of in love with both of tests. So.
Yes, thank you so much for your outstanding presentations and for simply being here with us today, sharing your knowledge, sharing your experience. It's extremely interesting and very rewarding.
Thank you so much for having us. It was really a pleasure to speak with you. We're really glad that we were able to contribute both to you and the students, and we really wish everybody good luck with taking the tests.
Thank you so much. And for anyone watching us at home, please don't forget to follow us and sign up to our channel so as not to miss any meetings in the future. And of course, be sure to stay in contact with EducationUSA Ukraine, as we are the ones who can provide you with inside information into your education and help you on your way. So thank you, everyone. Stay safe, stay healthy, and see you next time.
Thank you, everyone. See you next time.